Hey crocheters, this is Shannon with Dogwood Crochet, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet these Sherpa pumpkins. So let's get started. So to get started, you will need a 15mm crochet hook, and then you will also need a 9mm crochet hook. This one will just be for the stem, so if you want to use any size hook you have on hand, it's just for the stem, and the stem is only a few stitches, so it doesn't matter too much, but just maybe a smaller size hook. And then you will need some Sherpa yarn. I'm using Lion brand Gopher Fleece Sherpa yarn. This is a jumbo size Sherpa yarn. This is the color cream. And then you will also need some polyfill stuffing to stuff your pumpkin. And then you'll just need a little bit of scrap yarn for the stem. I cut about 50 inches. And then you can either use that same yarn or any other yarn that you have on hand. This is about 20 inches. This will be for making the dents in our pumpkin. You can also use more of the Sherpa yarn if you want for this step. And then we will just need a yarn needle for weaving in our ends and assembling the pumpkin. So let's get started. So we're going to start with our 15mm hook and our Sherpa yarn, and we're just going to make a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 7. And 7. All right, so we just chained 7. And the key to working with this Sherpa yarn is it's going to be very difficult to see your stitches or your chains, so you really just have to feel them. And I really think that the first row is the hardest. Once you've worked into those chains, then you can kind of feel in between the stitches. So hopefully this first row is just the hardest and it gets easier from here for you. But what we're going to do for row 1 is you don't count the loop that's on your hook. We're going to count 1, 2, 3. We're going to half double crochet into the 3rd chain from our hook. So you can also just kind of stick your finger through each chain to feel it. So this is 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to half double crochet into that 3rd chain from our hook. And then we will half double crochet into each chain across. So I can feel we just worked into this one, so I'm just gonna move over to the next one. Half double crochet. Feel for the next one. And our last chain here. All right, so by the end of row 1, you should have 5 half double crochets, and we will have 5 stitches at the end of each row for the rest of the pattern. So now we're going to chain 2 and turn. And then we're going to just place 1 half double crochet into each stitch across. Our chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So I'm just going to feel in between the stitches from row 1. And here is my first stitch that I'm going to work into. And then again, just feel for the next stitch here. and then our last stitch here. So again, we have 5 stitches at the end of row 2. And that is our repeat. So we just repeat 5 half double crochets across, and we do this for a total of 8 rows. So I'll show you how to count the rows. I usually just like to feel the stitch here, feel the top of it, that's 1, and then feel for the next one, and that's 2. So we've done 2 rows so far. Repeat this for a total of 8 rows, and then I will come back and show you how to assemble. Okay, so I just finished my 8 rows, and I have this rectangular pumpkin panel. Let me show you what the size looks like. It's about 4.5, 5-ish inches wide by 8 inches long. So that's great. That's kind of where I want my proportions to be for the pumpkin. If you're making this pumpkin a different size, just a general rule is to have, you want the length to be about 2 times the width. Another way that you can kind of check your proportions is to fold this corner over so that these edges line up, and then fold this corner over. And if it matches up with that corner, that's a pretty good, that'll give you a good idea of what your pumpkin will look like, or that it'll have good pumpkin proportions, I guess. So now we're going to assemble. So we're going to fold our panel in half, and there's no right or wrong side. And we're just going to slip stitch to join these 2 edges together here. And just try to work into each stitch at a time, like 1 stitch at a time. Just feeling for the stitches again, like we did when we were working our half double crochets. So we should have 5 slip stitches, but if you have a little more or a little less, it doesn't matter too much. The main goal here is just to join these edges. And in general, if your stitch count isn't coming out completely right each time, it's not a big deal, because if we have straight edges or not, it doesn't matter really, because we're going to be cinching up these edges to make the pumpkin. So don't stress too much about your stitches if you're having a hard time with the Sherpa yarn. Okay, so now we have this cylinder shape, and I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a pretty long tail for assembling. And then I'm just going to fasten off. All right. Next, I'm going to get my yarn needle and thread my tail through the needle. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to whip stitch around this opening of this circle here. So just try to go at even increments all the way around. And then we're back to where we started, and I'm just going to whip stitch one more time into that first stitch. Now we're just going to gently pull on our yarn tail to cinch this circle closed. Don't pull too hard because the yarn might snap. All right, there we go. Okay. It's always a little bit scary, that step. Okay. So now we have our circle, it's nice and closed. Then we can just weave our yarn tail in to secure it. I'm just going back and forth a few times to make sure that it's extra secure. And now we have this shape here. It kind of looks like a little beanie. And we're just going to turn this right side out now, I guess. Just whatever way it was opposite from where you had it before. And now we are going to stuff our pumpkin. So one thing I like to do is keep track of this yarn tail and put the stuffing on both sides of it so that it's even when I'm assembling. And you don't want to add too much stuffing. There's kind of a just right amount, so you can kind of act like you're going to cinch up this top here and see what you think of that shape. I'd say that looks pretty good. If it's overstuffed, it's gonna be kind of more like a ball. So I'd say err on the side of understuffing a little bit. And then, you know, once we start cinching this closed, if you decide you want to add more, you can definitely do that. So yeah, just repeating what we did on the other side, just cinching this top closed. Now we can check our stuffing levels one more time. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to, again, pull on the yarn tail to cinch it closed. And now we have our little pumpkin ball. So here's where this little scrap yarn comes in. You can either do this step with your Sherpa yarn, or if you prefer, you can use, this is just some like scrap wool yarn. It's up to you what you want to do. I find that sometimes the wool has a little bit more like friction and traction, so it holds the shape a little bit better, but you can definitely try it with the Sherpa. And then if you don't like how the Sherpa looks, or if it's just not giving as many dents or bumps as you want, you can add the wool later. So I'll show you how to do that now. So let's say we just want to use the Sherpa. I'm going to insert my needle. This is from top to bottom, and we're just going to place it through the middle of the pumpkin. And then I think that having kind of like 6 pie slices around our pumpkin looks the best in terms of how many like dents you want it to have, but it's totally up to you. But what we want to do now is pull our yarn tail around from bottom to top, and then place our needle from top to bottom again. And then pull that tight so that we have that dent. And then if we made a dent there, we want to go opposite that. So again, pulling from bottom to top, and then place our needle from top to bottom and pull that tight. So now you can see we have 2 dents here. We can go here. And just kind of, it doesn't have to be exact. Just place the dents where you think they would look best as you're working on it. And I think I want just one more dent here. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. So I actually ended up only doing 5, but it just depends on how the pumpkin shape is turning out and what you want yours to look like. So now let's say I wasn't super happy with like how the dents were looking. If I wanted to add a little more drama, you can just kind of tie this around and do the same thing. I kind of think of it as like preparing like, I don't know, like a chicken or a turkey or a pot roast or something, like with the strings. Like you just want to kind of tie it around, and then you can continue tying it so that it's at the bottom, just different places if you want to add that wool. But I'd say I'm pretty happy with how the Sherpa worked for me this time, so I'm gonna stick with that. So now we're going to do our stem. So I'm just going to get my 50 inches of yarn that I started with and make a slip knot. And I'm using my smaller size hook. This is a 9mm, but like I said, we're only doing this for like 4 stitches. So you can really use any size hook that you want. And then we're just going to chain 5. And then we're going to single crochet into the second chain from our hook. And then single crochet into each of the next chains. And then fasten off. So we should have 4 stitches, and this is our stem. So now I'm going to get my yarn needle again and thread this tail through my yarn needle so that I can sew the stem onto the pumpkin. All right. So just kind of place your stem where you think it would look good, and then just poke your needle in and pull that thread through. And now what we want to do is place our yarn through the other side of that stem as we weave it onto the opposite end of the pumpkin. And that will really secure it in place. All right, and now I'm just going to tie a double knot with my stem tails to really secure them. And then what I like to do is thread this other yarn tail through the needle as well. So I'll have both tails threaded on my needle. And then I'm just going to poke my needle down through the center of the pumpkin out the bottom. And pull that through. And then I can take my yarn needle off, check my stem one last time. And then I like to just tie a double knot with my pumpkin yarn tail and my stem yarn tails, just to make sure they're super secure. And you know, this is the bottom of the pumpkin, so no one's really gonna see it. And then you can either stuff them back into the center of the pumpkin or just cut the yarn tails. Just be careful not to cut the pumpkin itself. And that's it. That's how to crochet this Sherpa pumpkin. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And the full written pattern is available on my Etsy shop, and I will link it in the description box. Thanks for watching.